Welcome to this explainer. If you're managing serious capital, you already know the headlines rarely tell the whole story. Today, we're cutting through the mainstream AI euphoria to uncover the actual structural, economic, and geopolitical realities of the artificial intelligence boom. We're pulling back the curtain on the true cost of this digital revolution. Here's how we're going to break this down today. We'll dismantle the illusion of weightless AI, dig deep into its massive physical constraints, specifically energy and chips, look at the brutal economics, explore the geopolitics, and finally wrap it all up with some highly actionable macro Butler takeaways.
All right, part one, the illusion of weightless AI.
Look, we've all been sold this really pleasing narrative, right? That AI is this frictionless, magical software that effortlessly replaces human labor and just massively expands your margins. Well, to ground ourselves in reality, let's look at this startling admission from an NVIDIA executive. They flat out said that right now, the cost of compute is far beyond the costs of the employees. I mean, that completely shatters the myth that AI is a cheap, plug-and-play substitute for human workers. The pitch was shrinking costs and effortless automation, but the reality is looking quite a bit heavier. And you can see exactly why that is when you look at the true AI stack. Far from some ethereal software floating in the cloud, AI is literally a heavy industry in disguise. It's built on this rigid pyramid where those sleek, user-facing applications at the very top are entirely tethered to massive physical constraints down below. You've got the models, the infrastructure, the hardware chips, and at the absolute foundation, you have energy. That illusion of simplicity at the top is bought and paid for by massive hidden costs at the bottom. Which brings us to part two, the physical foundation, energy. Let's go right to the base of that pyramid, the raw electricity needed to turn data into calculation. We're constantly hearing about this green, futuristic tech utopia, orbital solar farms and nuclear fusion that are supposedly always 20 years away. But what's happening right now? Despite all that futuristic talk, big tech has an insatiable energy monster to feed, and they are currently sparking a massive, old-fashioned natural gas boom just to keep the servers humming. Every efficiency gain we get in AI is just immediately reinvested into bigger, hungrier models. And you can see this appetite translating directly into the macro data. Just look at the surging wholesale electricity prices across the US. Intelligence basically scales step for step with electricity now. The absolute true constraint on AI progress is securing firm, abundant power. Big tech is building out these massive data centers that frankly rival the power needs of entire nations, and in doing so, they're driving up wholesale electricity costs. It's acting as a hidden tax on the entire system. Okay, moving up to part three, the hardware squeeze, specifically chips. So stepping one layer up from power, we hit the physical vessels of all this calculation. Unlike pure thought, hardware ages, and it ages fast. It demands this relentless cycle of capital reinvestment. Check out this surge in memory chip costs. And this isn't just an isolated tech metric either. It is feeding right into broader electronics inflation. These physical chips have to be continually renewed if you want any meaningful scale. Progress in AI is completely tied to ongoing, escalating capital expense. And because these chips are so incredibly complex and their supply is so narrowly held, buying them isn't just a basic procurement headache anymore, it is a major geopolitical maneuver. Enter Pax Silica. This is a massive supply chain coalition driven by the US, designed specifically to lock down semiconductors and AI infrastructure. Nations have figured out that if the 20th century ran on oil and steel, the 21st century runs on compute and critical minerals. It's an all-out race to build capacity and control these vital supply chains. Let's dive into part four, the economics of AI. When you stack up those spiraling energy bills with the massive hardware costs we just talked about, the whole fairy tale of AI as a simple margin booster kind of pops like a helium balloon. Just look at these hyperscaler CapEx revisions from Bloomberg. These companies are being forced to dramatically revise their capital expenditure estimates upward by hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's just to maintain the illusion of seamless scaling. The sheer mountain of cash required for data centers, chips, cooling, and electricity is staggering. We really have to weigh the promise we were sold against the reality we're facing. The pitch was effortless automation, shrinking costs, and decentralized power. But the reality, AI acts a lot more like a very demanding pet. Every new trick requires more electricity, more maintenance, and incredibly complex augmentation. It's not necessarily eliminating work, it's rearranging it. So sure, the revenues might look sleek on a dashboard, but the costs are firmly anchored in heavy physical infrastructure and extreme power consolidation. Strip away the Silicon Valley narrative, and the macro numbers absolutely confess the truth here. Look at this fixed investment data. Spending on information processing equipment alone drove roughly 3/4 of recent U.S. growth. Think about that for a second. 3/4. It confirms what we've been saying. The digital revolution, and AI in particular, is absolutely not a weightless software phenomenon. It's a capital-intensive, heavy industry that is physically driving the economy.
That brings us to part 5, the geopolitics of intelligence. Zooming out to the global stage, AI totally sheds its identity as just a cool corporate tool. It is now a critical instrument of statecraft. Nations are approaching AI with the exact same gravity once reserved for land, sea, and air defense. They are fiercely competing across 3 foundational axes: the capacity to compute, the security of energy, and the control of data. This is the new battlefield, plain and simple. Commanding these axes means shaping the future of intelligence. Lacking them means total dependence on foreign powers. And this fierce competition is giving rise to what's being called technological mercantilism. With tech giants locking in massive arrangements with defense departments, the old charming idea that commercial platforms are separate from the state, well, that's practically vanishing. We're watching the convergence into a unified surveillance and security infrastructure. This tech rivalry isn't about who has the smartest chatbot. It's a much deeper contest for control over the core resources that generate power itself.
It honestly brings to mind this profound insight from George Orwell. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. As these AI systems quietly weave themselves into mission planning, government operations, and how we structure the world's information, they are centralizing authority. The interface might look light and breezy, but it rests on massive structures of power. Whoever defines memory and perception through these opaque systems is ultimately going to guide what's possible and shape our future.
All right, let's wrap this up with part 6, the macro Butler takeaways. So, what does all this mean for you, the sophisticated allocator? Let's distill this into the hard realities. Number 1, AI is a heavy industry. You are trading labor savings for heavy infrastructure and massive energy bills. Number 2, its progress is gated by physical limits, electricity, and chips, requiring endless capital reinvestment. Number 3, because of those massive barriers to entry, AI drives extreme market consolidation, stacking power at the top instead of democratizing it. Number 4, sovereignty and geopolitics now dictate the cost of scale. And finally, we are ushering in an AI-garchy, where power is hard-coded into centralized systems. AI is an energy-hungry, capital-devouring transition. So, the million-dollar question is, how is your portfolio going to survive and actually thrive in the heavy industrial reality of this new AI-archy? To navigate the hidden costs of this era, avoid the mainstream hype, and get bespoke macro advisory, reach out to the Macro Butler today at info@themacrobutler.com and make sure to check out the website at themacrobutler.com. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and stay sharp out there.